The topic is the Tennessee State University Marching Band, and we're talking to the director of the Tennessee State University Marching Band, Mr. Edward Graves. And of course, Director Graves and Professor Graves, before we had our break, we promised that we would come back and we would talk about that extraordinary Tennessee State University Marching Band, the aristocrat of bands, I think it's called. Let's have you to give us a little history about that band and talk about it from the way that you'd like to talk about it during this segment.
Okay. The band, as we know it today, had its beginning when Dr. Walter Davis, then president, brought Mr. Chavis in to organize a band. Of course, during that time, Mr. Chavis was an innovator with the marching band because he did things like adding lights to the band members. They would turn the lights out in the stadium, and the band members had lights on their feet and in their caps and things, which was very unique at that time. And things went from there, which was very innovative. And Tennessee State's band was quite famous for that. And at the time, they got a lot of national exposure by playing in the Capitol Classic in Washington, D.C. So after that, Mr. Chavis' tenure, Mr. Frank Greer, who was my band director at Tennessee State, came in, I believe it was 1951 or so, and started the marching band. And they called it Marching 100, I believe. And during that particular time, band bought new uniforms. Dr. Davis was very instrumental in that. And they came up with the term the aristocrat of bands. They fashioned it after the way that the band was dressed because we had the change of uniforms and a lot of different stuff that nobody else had. And of course, at that time, because of the band played jazz music, popular music, show tunes, and classical music, with a total array of type of performances that were done, the term aristocrat of bands was applied. During Mr. Greer's term, band, of course, started its television appearances at National Football League games, which was a big thing at that time. And during the time that I was there, we did a national television thing from Baltimore with Baltimore Colts. And then the biggie out of that, the Tennessee State's band was the first band from a historically black institution to appear in an presidential inaugural parade. And that was in 1961, I believe, for President John F. Kennedy. And I was a student in the band at that time. So things continued, and then in 1979, I was asked to come, and of course we very eagerly accepted and came and to rebuild the band program, so to speak. They had some misfortune with a strike and a lot of different things that happened to cause the numbers to fall a little bit. So the administration at that time was very eager to have a strong program, and we were fortunate to be able to come. We came with a former schoolmate here in the band, with Mr. Benjamin Kirk, and I were working together in North Carolina. And we came in, and Mr. Thomas Davis, who's still with us, was here at the time, so he joined us, and we started. During the time since we've been here, we've been able to do several national television appearances. We've done a TV movie, I believe it was called The Concrete Cowboy, something like that. So we played at several National Football League games, and since during that era, it was popular for college football games to be televised. So during that era, our band was featured on some of Tennessee State football games that were televised live on ABC. We've been fortunate also to, in 1984, our marching band was invited to participate in the Mirage Bowl in Tokyo, Japan, which was an outstanding opportunity for the band, the university, the students, and for the band directors, to be able to just, some of our students at that time had never been on a plane.
Go to Tokyo.
Go to Tokyo, 12-hour nonstop flight. So it was an outstanding adventure for the students. That same year, 1984, in November, our jazz band under the direction of Benjamin Kirk was invited to participate in the, that was July of 1984. the jazz ensemble was invited to participate in the Montreux International Jazz Festival in Switzerland. And Mr. Kirk, in addition to that, after that festival concluded, took a quintet of students from that same ensemble to Nigeria for 10 days on a tour. So it was a wonderful opportunity for all of us, and a wonderful education for our students to be able to have that type of exposure. Since that time, the band has been invited to participate in both of President Clinton's inaugural parades. So it was 30 years after my participation as a student to be able to take the Tennessee State Band back as a director. So we haven't been able to come down off of that yet. It's still an outstanding opportunity.
You know, I think that we have to admit that that there's a tremendous deficit in terms of finding enough students to participate in the band, which is to say that it's going to be difficult unless more and more young people are educated in music, that music does not hold the place that it once held. What can you say, and what have you thought about in terms of what we ought to do in order to try to make people more, our young people more aware of music as such?
Well, one of the things that we do is to try to expose people to Tennessee State and through our travels with the band, and the type of contacts that we try to make into public schools, and to expose youngsters in all avenues or areas of the community to our program, hoping that if some youngster would see our band perform in their elementary school or in their high school, it might inspire somebody to want to do what they see our youngsters do. We've had some success with that, and we are constantly seeking places for our youngsters to participate in programs that might inspire some youngsters. It is difficult to find numbers of people, and in doing so, we have a web of contacts for recruitment of students to attract them to Tennessee State. And the type of exposure that we're getting in Memphis and with the national television and in Atlanta and other places helps a lot. And with the friends that we have, alumni that are directing students to us. And of course, like you said, the biggest problem now is to try to encourage people to get involved in music. And that's the biggest thing that we are trying to deal with now, to encourage more students to want to be a part of a musical organization and get a musical education. Not people for necessarily that want to.
Let me interrupt here.
Yes.
We'll be back with you following this short commercial break.